Today you're coming for a drive with me in the Range Rover. It's a long stretch today, about 750 kilometres at an average of 90 kilometres an hour. And since you are unable to respond to my comments, it's going to be a little bit of a one-sided conversation. I'm not only going to talk about the car, but more importantly, some things about life as I reflect on my business choices, family choices, and how a mixture of success and failure has led me to this point, doing a job that I couldn't possibly have dreamed that I might be doing one day. What began as a quest to find and purchase, no matter its state, my Range Rover that I sold 30 years ago, has led me to this. Sleeping the night, curled on the back seat, to be woken by the Australian bush calls and being reacquainted with the familiar smell of gear oil. This series of videos is that story. I'm St Pierre White. Join me as I share my passion for building four-wheel drive trucks and then travelling to the remotest parts of the world. These videos are made possible by contributions from Patreons. Join the Patreon family now. You know, not a great deal of thought went into, what am I going to do with it? Honestly, not a great deal of thought. And I just loved it for what it is, and wanted to own one again, and wanted to know what it was going to feel like to own it again. While the vehicle is bringing back a huge sense of nostalgia, it's not, it has not created in me a huge sense of longing. I don't have this burning desire to do with this vehicle what I did with my first one. Not at all. I like the idea that I'm owning one again. I love the way it looks. I love everything about it. And every time I stand back and every time I look at it and every time I climb into it, I get a sense of, it's a thing of beauty. To me, it's the most beautiful car ever made. Right? Obviously, this is personal. And I now own the most beautiful car that's ever been made. The classic two-door, the very early two-door Range Rovers. So now I own it. What am I going to do with it? I could just sort out a few little issues, have it registered, and pay the yearly license fee and drive it around and tinker with it and keep it running. I could do that. That's a viable proposition. That's the least expensive proposition. I could make it into my daily driver. I think I would enjoy it as a daily driver on a few conditions. I live in Western Australia, and as a daily driver, I use my Troopy or my 79. The 79 Extended was not a good daily driver at all. It's not so much its length, but its turning radius because of the chassis extension makes it a bit of a pig in traffic. Quite difficult, actually. I was once actually caught in a parking lot. I could not get out. So it's not an ideal daily driver at all, but it's a great tourer. I'm building another troop carrier. I'm going to have a great tourer. I'm going to build a tourer second to none. Okay, and the interesting thing about what I do for a living is that I've been, because I admitted, and I mentioned in the beginning of the video when I admitted that I wasn't that happy with the Dream Tourer. People called it a whale and talked about how heavy it was. Actually, it wasn't that heavy. It looked. And this was the problem. It looked wrong. It wasn't wrong. It looked wrong. You take a vehicle and you say, oh, that's a whatever. You give it a name, like a label, like a rhino or dinosaur or something, because of the way it looks. And I agree, it look like a bit of a dinosaur, whatever. Yeah, it did look great. Wasn't that heavy. Actually drove very well. Personally, I'd just gone too far. So, back to the Range Rover. I have no desire to try and build this into anything I'm going to use apart from a daily driver or maybe a weekend trip. That's it. Because I'm going to have another go at building the perfect tourer. My first troop carrier was sensationally good. Brilliant. But of course you're only judged by your last failure. That's how the world judges you. How did your last failure go? We'll judge you according to that. And the Dream Tourer was not a failure by any stretch of the imagination. Because guess what? I learnt a lot. And I learnt a lot, not about vehicle building, not much about, yes I did. The first time I built a camper, I did learn about. I learnt about me. I learnt about what I really want. So people that have a poke at, your failure and your last thing, you're so narrow-minded when you do that. Unbelievably thick. Have you never tried something and failed? Well, if the answer is no, then you haven't lived. You don't have a valuable life. If you have never tried something and learnt what it's like to fail and have to get up again, then you are living a shallow, narrow life. You are not getting what life has to offer, what life offers. If you cannot accept that failure is good. Failure is good. Success is better. Yes, it is. If you think failure in another human being and you get pleasure out of failure out of another human being, there's a word for that. I wish I could remember it. It would be a great Scrabble word. Failure of another human being brings you pleasure. What kind of narrow, pointless existence is that? And nobody, not a person on this planet who has ever tried something and failed would ever do that and point a finger at another person and take joy in their failure. Or if they do that, have tried something and failed, the failure was so severe that it weakened them to the point where they became very bitter about other people's success. And there are those as well. They're very sad, and it's very sad. I'm not one of those people. And to be honest with you, I don't have a lot of sympathy for those kind of people. I have sympathy for people who try and fail and try, particularly those who don't have a good advantage to start with. Because let's face it, many of us are advantaged. It's life. It's not wrong, it's not bad, it's life. Some of us are born with massive opportunities and possibilities and do absolutely nothing with them. Waste them away. That's the saddest of all. And some are, I guess I'm in this category, blessed with, I was blessed, middle class home, I had opportunities, my parents didn't buy me a car, my parents didn't buy me much, gave me a good education. They said they would pay for university, but they would only pay for if I passed. I decided not to go to university. Instead, I became a film editor, an apprentice film editor. Turned out I was quite good at it. I did well quite quickly. I worked very hard. It didn't fall in my lap. And I have had failures. I had several failures. But my my career I consider to be successful. I consider my family life to be very successful. I said to my daughter the other day, were we good parents? We were talking about family stuff. And I said to her, were we good parents? And it was Stephanie, my eldest, and she leaned forward, she said, Dad, and Stephanie and Kate were there, I don't think Aaron was there. She said, Dad, it's 8:15 on a Saturday night, and we're spending time with you. Do you think you are good parents? And I suppose that's an answer. That's a good answer. It's an easy answer. I guess we were good parents. I don't know if I was a great parent. I don't know. At the end of the day, was I a successful parent? Yes. Was I a perfect parent? No. You don't have to be a perfect parent. That's not required. It's like any big project that you set out to do and you set out to achieve. Two things you need. You need to accept that you're not particularly good at it, which means you've got a lot to learn. And if you are the kind of person that can learn from others, and when you see failure in others, you don't point fingers and criticize and call them names. You ask the question, why? Why? What caused that? What was the... Things don't happen in isolation. They're always called causalities. What caused my child to do the following? What was the possible cause? And learn from it. There's nothing more you can do. And learn from it. But here's the thing. You've got to learn how to change. You've got to learn how to change. You've got to be humble and say, yeah, that didn't work out well. I'm going to try something else. Because the end result wasn't what I achieved. The other point about this, of course, is always know what the end result. Always know what your end result. Always know what the desired end result will be, should be, would best be. It's you know, something would happen with our kids, and something would happen, and Gwynn would, or I would, make a decision to do something. And one of us would say, okay, what is the end goal here? What do we want as a result of this reaction? So our kids would do something, and then we would want to react, and we'd say, whoa, hold on. What do we want the end result of what we're about to say to be? Ask that. Stop. Whoa. No knee-jerk reactions. What do we want to happen now? Is what we're planning moving towards that end? And sometimes we would change our minds completely. Oh no, okay, yeah, that wouldn't have worked. Right. If you keep doing things the same way again and again and again, you're likely to get the same result again and again and again. It's even been written as a definition of a mad person, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Change. Try something different, but rationalize it. If I think back on my business life and the success and failures, my business and work have been driven by what I want to do, or what I have to do. I'm not saying that my entire business life has just been about doing what I want to do and see what happens. Not that at all. But it's been driven by what do I really want to do? Okay, without question. It's working now. This is a working day for me, making programs, making podcasts, making videos, and teaching people how to make films. My background is broadcast television, and I love teaching. I've been told I'm a very good teacher because I'm passionate. In my early career, we worked incredibly hard. We were paid, I wasn't paid well. I was an apprentice. I was paid, I wouldn't say poorly, but I wasn't paid well. But I was learning a trade. I was expected to work long hours, no overtime, not a cent overtime. When a production came in, the footage was given to the assistant editor. The assistant editor had to prepare it for the editor. Logging rushes, synchronizing rushes, these things will only mean anything to people that have been in the film industry. And preparing the edit suite for an editor to come in and sit down and be creative. This wasn't a creative position. It wasn't an administrative position. I used to have to organize work from laboratories, ordering prints and intermediate negatives and optical negatives, and in the course of producing films. It was intense. The learning curve was very, very steep. It was very stressful, very demanding, and immensely enjoyable. I look upon my early career with great fondness and affection. I was put into a situation where I could edit a film. My editor was ill. The producer came to me and said, "We have to have this. Can you do it?" I said, "Of course I can do it." I knew technically how to do it. It's easy. Could I do it creatively? Well, it was my chance to have a go. And I started editing film. And I edited a commercial called Cerebos. It was a salad dressing.
When Cerebos prepared their dressings, they came up with something different. With new Cerebos dressing, you can't tell the bottom from the top because they're specially prepared. No shaking. Just pour and you get an even helping of herbs and spices. There's Cerebos mixed garden herbs, tomato, onion and garlic, sweet peppers and parsley, and lemon parsley with chili. Each with its own unique fresh taste. New Cerebos dressings, specially prepared, so you can't tell the bottom from the top.
And of course, I felt a wonderful sense of accomplishment. 3 years after that, I was headhunted by an editing company.
Beats down the rhythm, let the wind blow cool and strong. Let the fire light up the faces of the friends who sing along. May the fire horizon out there help you dream a better dream. Oh, may it always make you wanna sing the song. With your friends watching the sun sing. With your friends watching the sun sing.
When you drink a Carling this way, you're getting the best of it. And maybe you'll find it's something that up to now you never knew you were missing.
With your friends watching the sun sing.
Carling Black Label, the great American beer.
With that company, I stayed there for almost 4 years, and I was editing for some of the top directors.
Get the flavor of this big wide world. Feel the excitement from the Florida Keys to laissez-faire Greece.
Your kind of life? Then Paul Revere is your cigarette. Paul Revere. Rich taste. Full flavor. the pride of tobaccos.
Hello? I think he's out. Out to lunch. Oh.
Great friendships blossom with the great taste of blossom.
South Africa's standard of South African commercials production was as high as anywhere in the world. You wouldn't think so. As high as anywhere in the world. On a par with UK and even the United States. Very high standard. Because we won lots of international awards. And so highly respected around the world. And it still is today. And I got the opportunity to work with some amazing people. It was when that changed and I was still a good editor and I was still making good money. I mean, for heaven's sakes, there was one stage where I owned a 10-year-old Range Rover, this watch, Rolex watch, which I bought new, and a Leica camera. Yeah, I didn't have kids, but I was doing okay. I was paid good money. Bought my first brand new car, brand new Land Rover 110 in 91, I think it was. No, 89. So, that all changed when I stopped enjoying it. And if you're going to be good at something, you better enjoy it. If making money is what you enjoy, then I guess the method of getting to that point of making money is less important than the making money. Because you are enjoying making the money, however it comes to be. That wasn't important to me personally. It's not important to most people, actually, making money. But having a career is, of course, important, and having a career that is rewarding. My father said to me, he showed me a comic, it was the Jetsons. Weren't they a family that they were, I can't remember the details, but I just remember Mr. Jetson had a job of switching on a switch in a factory. That's his job. His job was to switch on a switch in a factory. On, off, on, off. My father actually said, "Do you want to be that guy?" Good heavens, no. And work hard. That was the sum total of the career counselling my father gave me. I didn't need any more. I did not need any more. I was not a hard worker at school. And man, was I a hard worker once I'd left. When I saw a path in front of me, nothing was going to stop me. And so, I mean, it didn't, and I did very well, and did very well quite quickly. When that advertising environment got to be such that I didn't enjoy it anymore. Gwynn and I, simultaneously, she was also tiring of what she was doing. We decided together to take off at least a year and go and live in the Botswana bush. And of course that was our year in the Okavango Delta, running a lodge and the book, Torn Trousers, which by the way won a literary award, small award, but an award nevertheless, about our year in the Okavango.
There is a place so tranquil that angels go there to rest. It is a place of such singular beauty, even the lilies dress for dinner. Yet the ebb and flow of its life-giving water is determined by a climate 1,000 miles away. The water level is high during times of drought and low in times of rain. At its heart, a river that seeks the sea but never finds it. This was where my heart lay, in the Okavango Delta in northern Botswana. In that case, what was I doing? Living in a crime-ridden city? What would it take for us to escape? My wife, that's what. Torn Trousers is the true story of how a 30-something couple, Andrew and Gwynn, and their Siamese cat sold everything: houses, cars, aeroplanes, fired clients, and escaped to a desert island in the Okavango Delta. Woefully inexperienced, we took control of a luxury lodge where the rich go game spotting while sipping G&Ts. Trouble soon followed. Torn Trousers is available from Amazon in digital, softcover, and audiobook. At the time we did that, when we left the Okavango, it was, okay, what resources do we have? I still had some film editing equipment. Actually, it was video editing equipment by then, but I had the equipment, which was very valuable. I had rented it out during my absentee period, and I got back into editing. At the same time, and while I was in Botswana, I wrote a book, and the book was about four-wheel drive. It was called A Complete Guide to Four-Wheel Drive in Southern Africa. We realized that getting back into advertising, it was no longer fulfilling. I'd done it. It was like the old heavyweight coming back. I'd done it. I didn't have the energy. I didn't have the passion that I once had. And as a result, I wasn't that good at it. There were other editors who were far better. Far better than I. And I could see their work. There was one guy called Paul Werter, I think his name was. Doesn't really matter what his name is. And he was like me. He wasn't terribly good at the razzmatazz. He was a shy guy. He wasn't good at the smoozing clients. Half of them used to snort cocaine and do things like that I just couldn't abide. And I thought, man, he's a good editor. Wow, look at his cuts. It's beautiful cutting work. And so I thought, I'm like him. I'm just like him. I don't even think I'm editing as well as he's editing. I don't want to be second best. I mean, when I was the best, I was the best. Or one of the best. That's a sense of achievement. You get to a point in your life where the achievement of what you're doing, surely that's time to say, okay, what are my resources? What have I got? It's easy to say that because at the time, it was just Gwynn and I. We didn't have kids. We didn't have a mortgage. So we didn't have massive debt. I owned the Land Rover. But it was a drive to, if you're not going to enjoy it, you're not going to be good at it, and you're not going to be successful at it. This is logical. This is logical. I wasn't. What I was good at was four-wheel driving. When I say good, what do I mean by good at four-wheel driving? Well, I knew a lot about it because I'd done a lot of it. I was experienced. I'd done a lot of epic touring. And I wrote it down in a book. And it was South Africa's very, very first four-wheel drive book. And
that book and editions of it remained on sale uninterrupted in that country for 24 years. The last ones were sold, I think, in 2017, were the last ones sold in South Africa. That's something I like to boast about, because I feel it's a sense of achievement. I wasn't a great writer. I was a poor speller. But I was a reasonable writer. And the books were the new thing that I loved to do. So again, Gwynn and I sat down and said, okay, what do you love to do? What are our resources? Our resources are four-wheel drive knowledge. I've got a four-wheel drive outside. The book I wrote in Botswana while we were in the lodge, I learned about solar. First time I'd ever bought a Bell TXL and set up a little system and a small inverter and used an Apple Mac. Laptops didn't exist then. I think. Anyway, I had an Apple Mac and I bought it in, and I even brought in a little printer and operated this and wrote my book. The book was published a year and a half after we returned from the Okavango, and it became a very good seller. Very good. Our third book, Gwynn and I were then commissioned to do a second book, and our third book was commissioned by a big book company, C&A. And our publisher was then went into liquidation, which was a huge surprise to us, because at the time our fourth book was in production and we had already signed some advertising and sponsorship deals to make the fourth book possible, and it all fell apart. A book publisher called Southern Books, whom I had approached with my first manuscript, and who had rejected me. Well, they rejected the book anyway. It felt like a personal rejection. Was going to buy the publisher, our publisher, named by William Waterman was the name of the publisher, was going to buy it, but on one condition: that the Andrew St Pierre White, Gwynn White titles stayed. Well, that was vindication right there. But then Gwynn and I said, what do we want to do? What do we really want to do? We want to have a family. Okay. Which means we're not going to go back to the Okavango. Right. Which means we're going to have to live in a town. Right. Which means we're going to have to make a living out of our resources. Right. Do we want to edit film anymore? Not really. Do we want to make some films? We want to continue making films? Maybe, I don't know. But we're writing books now. Let's focus on the books. We realized that we could do what we really wanted to do, i.e. write and publish books on four-wheel drive and make a living out of it. There was an advertisement on television for a bank called Volkskas Bank, no longer exists, it was all swallowed up by the other big banks, advertising small business loans. We went to see them, and they said yes. They loaned us the money to publish because in those days we had to print at least 4,000 to 5,000 copies before the book became viable. But you'd have to borrow the money to print those books, and then they would sit on shelves for a while they sold. And I've got a bloody road trainer right behind me again. unnerving, these road trains. I think it's so close to you. I think he's probably going to overtake me again. He stopped. Probably to get breakfast. Anyway, maybe I should have. Here he comes. Slow a little bit, let him get past. Right, where was I? Okay, we got the load. Had the books printed. The biggest challenge was getting distributors, but the distributors who had done so well with our previous editions immediately said yes. We got a distributor, and it worked well, and we created a good little business. Towards the end of that business, which was being wound down at about 2008, we had 16 books had been printed, and we had a map business. We had a total of 15 plus titles, South African advanced maps, GPS coordinates, really detailed, topographical style travel maps. We took an idea of a topographical, we turned it into a travel map. That's why I love maps. That's why I love the HEMA maps. I wish I'd had those resources that HEMA has to create my maps. Anyway, that was that. I had enough. Gwynn had enough. And we said, what do we do now? I sold the map business. I was tired of it. I was bored of it. We'd been doing it for so long. I wanted a change. I wanted film. I had made I think we had 4 or 5 VHS and later DVD titles, including 4x4 driving. They're all on, most of them are on YouTube. 4x4 driving, recovery, vehicle equipment, even the GPS, that's not on YouTube. How to use the GPS, the navigators, that's not on because it's too dated now. So it's not on YouTube. Got tired of it. I wanted to make films. And so I started doing television. At that time, it was extremely difficult to get the sponsors to make a television show. They're enormously expensive to make. And South African television industry being what it is, we had to pay the broadcasters to broadcast the film. So we would make the film and then pay them. It was that commercial. And it became extremely difficult. And again, it was so difficult to do. I loved doing it. And I had produced a film called The Death of Pelican 16, which was the story of an air crash, which was broadcast by Discovery Channel. They gave us a bit of money for it. They didn't even cover production costs. I didn't make it to make money. I made the film because of the joy of filmmaking. It was on Discovery Channel, so I can say that I've had my shows on Discovery Channel. But the desire to make that kind of film and actually make documentary films was the motivation for us to move to the UK. That, and as significantly, every bit as significantly, the South African economy was in a very, very bad way, and socially it was a difficult place to live, and socially I thought to myself, and a few South Africans will argue with me with this, but I'm sorry, there was no future. Let's put it this way. the future for my children was not satisfactory to me in South Africa. Guys, this is just my opinion. This is how I feel. If you disagree with me, that's okay. Some of you will. I still get very, very nasty letters from people. Should have stayed in South Africa. It's great here. We have different understandings of the meaning of great. Okay. So we left. And in England I realized that I could continue making the films that I wanted to make. But the platform would be YouTube. And here I am now. But in all of this, there was one overriding hook that hooked Gwynn and I and has kept us captive our entire working lives. And that is, I will not commute to work. No. It was the single most important driving factor. I will not commute to work. And the occasional time, even now, when I have to drive in rush hour traffic. I remember once being in the UK, chatting to a guy on a train from Southampton to London. And I said to him, you work in London? Yeah. You do this every day? Yeah. It's an hour and a half train ride? Yeah. Do it twice a day? Yeah. 3 hours of your day. 3 hours of every day. And at least 5 days a week, if not more. 3 hours. I decided, again, when I saw that, we had made the right decision. We were driven by the right motivation. And even today. So there, for us, was I think, the key to our success, business-wise. We had a fundamental truth, and we refused to move from it. Will not commute. And we did everything in our power to that end. The last time I commuted to work was 1985. Last time Gwynn commuted to work was probably 1993. There's our story. I hope it's given you a little bit of inspiration. Goal setting and sticking to your principles. Not always easy, but it always works. It always ends up, and it prevents the situation where you look at yourself and you say, why, how did we get here? We know exactly how we got where we got. And we got where we wanted to be because we stuck to basic principles. We'll not commute, and we'll do what we love. It was not all plain sailing, I assure you. But it was worth it. Thank you for spending this time with me.
These videos are made possible by contributions from Patreons. Join the Patreon family now.